So, what if I told you that the biggest, most explosive argument you and your partner ever had about money had, well, absolutely nothing to do with math?
I mean, most people wouldn't believe you, but it is entirely true.
Right. It's wild. Today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly that. We are looking at why couples go to absolute war over like a $15 Amazon package.
Yeah. Or why just hearing the phrase, let's look at the budget, triggers an actual fight or flight response.
Exactly. And to figure this out, we're pulling from this really insightful guide called Marriage, Money, and the Art of Financial Unity.
It's such a great source because it doesn't read like an accounting textbook. It's really more of a psychological puzzle.
Yeah, and our mission for this deep dive is to extract the smartest, most practical strategies from it. Basically, how to talk about money without the side eye, without the blame game,
Yeah, without someone suddenly announcing they just need to go take a walk.
and disappearing out the front door. Yes. We want to permanently end the courtroom drama of household finances. Because mastering this topic, honestly, it's the ultimate shortcut to relationship peace.
It really is, because when you finally stop treating financial disagreements as math problems and start treating them as emotional puzzles, so many other underlying tensions just begin to dissolve.
So let's jump right into that core psychological friction. The biggest misconception you carry into a relationship is the idea that the numbers on the page are the actual antagonist in the room.
Right, the numbers are just neutral data.
Exactly. The source material has this incredibly revealing scenario. It talks about a couple having a massive blowout argument, and the wife is convinced they are fighting about trust and broken promises.
Wow, yeah, high stakes.
Right. Meanwhile, the husband is absolutely certain they are fighting about her ordering packages, like she is, personally responsible for keeping the postal service in business.
I mean, they aren't even having the same conversation at that point.
Not at all. Both of them are trying to achieve the exact same goal, which is simply to feel safe. But they are speaking entirely different emotional languages.
Yeah, one partner hears the phrase, we need to review our spending, and their brain translates that to, great, we are being responsible, we are building a fortress of security.
Right. It's comforting for them.
Exactly. But the other partner hears the exact same English sentence, and their brain translates it to, I am currently being audited by my spouse, and my freedom is about to be restricted.
Oh, audited by your spouse. That is a terrible feeling. And I think this plays perfectly into the dynamic between a natural saver and a natural spender.
Oh, absolutely.
And for anyone listening who already knows which one they are, we don't need to define the basic habits. What's far more interesting here is the invisible friction those labels create, because it almost always devolves into a moral superiority contest.
It does. It completely stops being about dollars and cents and just becomes a judgment of character.
Oh,
The saver genuinely believes they hold the moral high ground because, they're prudent, they're cautious, they are protecting the family's future.
they view a coupon not just as a discount, but as a badge of honor.
Exactly. It's like a winning lottery ticket to them.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, the spender doesn't see themselves as reckless.
No, of course not.
They see themselves as generous or as someone who understands that life is meant to be experienced. They think they hold the moral high ground because they are creating joy today rather than hoarding for a tomorrow that isn't even guaranteed.
And they probably call themselves a strategist, which is just budget language for I already ordered it.
Oh, 100%.
But once that moral superiority sets in, you aren't trying to understand your partner anymore. You're actively trying to convict them of a crime.
It becomes a courtroom.
Right. And arguing over the specific line items in a budget, like the Amazon packages or the unused gym membership, when the underlying issue is moral judgment, well, it's like arguing over a leaky faucet when the foundation of your house is actively sinking into the earth.
That is a perfect analogy. You are entirely focused on treating a symptom while completely ignoring the disease.
Tightening a wrench while the floorboards literally vanish beneath your feet.
Yeah. So, to fix the foundation, you have to understand what the source text calls origin stories.
This part was fascinating.
It really is. Every single person brings a financial origin story into their relationship, and it is almost exclusively written during their childhood.
So long before we ever have a bank account of our own.
Exactly. We absorbed our parents' financial anxieties, their habits, the unspoken rules.
Like, imagine growing up in a household where money was tight. Every single dollar was tracked, discussed, and worried over at the dinner table.
The default answer to everything is, we can't afford that.
Right. Now take that person and pair them with someone who grew up in a home where money was absolutely never discussed.
Maybe there was plenty of it, or maybe there was a mountain of hidden debt, but it was just a strictly taboo subject.
So their emotional baselines are completely opposed from day one.
Radically opposed. For the first person, talking about money, tracking it, obsessing over it, that's a survival mechanism. It is literally how they prevent the sky from falling.
But for the second person, talking about money feels incredibly awkward or intrusive or even rude. It disrupts their peace.
So when the saver tries to initiate a conversation about a budget, they feel like they were throwing a life preserver.
Yeah, but the spender feels like they're being dragged into a panic attack.
Precisely. And because these origin stories are deeply ingrained survival mechanisms, the environment and the timing of the money conversation have to be deliberately engineered to bypass those triggers.
Yeah, you cannot just spring a budget review on someone while they are making a sandwich.
No, timing is everything. But unfortunately, human nature dictates that we almost always talk about money at the worst possible moment.
We wait until something is actively on fire.
Always.
Like the car transmission completely dies, or the debit card gets declined right there in the grocery checkout line.
Or someone opens the banking app on a Tuesday morning, their stomach completely drops, and suddenly they are demanding an immediate summit meeting in the kitchen.
Yeah, and at that point, cognitive overload is already peaking. Panic has set in.
The absolute worst time to talk about money is when someone's nervous system is screaming at them. The most effective conversations happen when nobody is panicking.
Which means you have to utilize what the guide calls gentle honesty during these non-panic times.
Yes. A huge part of bypassing that fight or flight response is changing the vocabulary. You have to move from you statements to I statements.
So instead of attacking your partner's character by saying, "You are the reason our budget cries every month," which immediately makes them defensive, you shift the focus to your own internal experience.
Right. You say, I am feeling really anxious about our buffer this month, or I feel like I need more structure to sleep well at night.
And that subtle shift from accusation to vulnerability, it completely changes the dynamic in the room.
It does. Harsh words might win the immediate argument and force compliance in the moment, but they will absolutely erode the partnership over time.
The text shared a really intense story about a husband who would physically leave the room whenever the topic of finances came up. He would just walk right out the front door.
Yeah, and it's so easy to label that behavior as immature or just irresponsible avoidance.
But when they dug into his origin story, they found something profound. He had grown up watching vicious money fights literally tear his parents' marriage apart.
So for him, every single conversation about a budget wasn't a planning session, it was a warning siren.
Right, it was the precursor to abandonment.
And once a spouse understands that context, the approach has to change completely. You don't lower your financial standards or just give up on budgeting, but you drastically raise your compassion.
You have to engineer a safe space where that trauma isn't triggered.
Exactly.
But I do want to challenge this idea of a scheduled financial meeting, though.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because if someone has deep-seated money trauma, like the guy who associates budgets with divorce, won't instituting a mandatory scheduled weekly money meeting just feel like scheduling a weekly panic attack.
That's a fair point.
But no matter how much gentle honesty you use, they know exactly what is waiting for them on the calendar every Sunday afternoon.
That is a highly observant pushback. And it highlights exactly why the setting and the tone of these meetings must be radically different from what people expect.
Okay, so how do we make it different?
Well, you cannot make this feel like a cold corporate tax audit. You don't sit across a glass table under fluorescent lighting with a stack of highlighted spreadsheets.
Like, definitely not.
You have to physically and psychologically disarm the situation. And honestly, this involves utilizing coffee, tea, and crucially, snacks.
Hacking your own biology with a plate of nachos to get through a budget review, I love it.
It sounds trivial, I know, but it is an incredibly powerful psychological tool. Sharing food biologically lowers the temperature in the room.
Because it signals to our primitive brains that we are safe, that we are among friends.
Exactly. We are not under threat if we're eating together. You pair that physiological safety with humor to further lower the stakes.
Like, instead of declaring, "We are completely broke this week," you joke, "We are temporarily between paydays."
Yes. Or you refer to a strict spending limit as a highly opinionated budget.
That's great. Or you establish a safe word. The guide mentions having a phrase like, "Let's bring this back to earth before somebody files for emotional bankruptcy."
It breaks the tension instantly.
And it serves as a tangible reminder that regardless of what the numbers on the screen say, you are both sitting on the same side of the table. You aren't adversaries.
You are partners attempting to solve a logistical puzzle together.
Okay, so empathy and a calm nervous system are absolutely essential prerequisites.
But, and this is a but empathy without execution is simply a pleasant conversation.
Right. Good feelings and shared nachos do not automatically pay the electric bill.
Unfortunately not. And that is the critical pivot point in the guide. The couple still has to actually execute the day-to-day operations of running a household without stepping on each other's toes.
Those warm feelings have to be translated into rigid, clear systems.
There is a fascinating shift in perspective when couples start building this foundation early on. The book talks about a pre-engaged couple who tackled this.
Yeah, discussing finances, expectations, and assigning responsibilities before the ring was ever given.
Because commitment is the preparation itself, not just the proposal. Waiting for a ring or a wedding certificate before acting like a unified team is such a common pitfall.
The actual foundation of a partnership is built in the highly mundane, unromantic conversations about who tracks the receipts and who calls the internet provider.
Absolutely. Because when those roles remain unclear, the resulting stress is immense.
Because somebody actually has to sit down and reconcile the spending. Somebody has to initiate the bank transfers.
Somebody has to put on their detective hat and figure out why 3 different premium streaming services are still billing the credit card every month.
Even though nobody has watched them in a year.
The phantom subscriptions, they are everywhere.
They really are. And when roles are nebulous, this very specific, destructive dynamic takes over: mutual assumption.
Yes, the dreaded phrase, "I thought you were doing it."
Which has to be the most catastrophic financial strategy in human history.
Really is.
I always compare it to a basketball team where all 5 players are out on the court, but every single one of them assumes somebody else is playing defense.
So they all just stand there.
Completely flat-footed, just watching the opposing team score layup after layup.
That is a fantastic visualization. And what happens when the opposing team inevitably scores? Like when the electric bill is late and the late fee gets applied.
Everyone in the household is completely shocked and outraged.
Everyone except the utility company, which has seen this exact scenario play out a million times.
So true. So the solution is explicit role assignment. But that doesn't mean the work has to be split straight down the middle, right? Like a perfect 50-50.
Not at all. The goal isn't identical participation. The goal is a unified outcome.
Okay, so how do you divide it then?
Splitting things 50-50 is actually often less effective than splitting things based on natural aptitude.
Oh, that makes sense.
One person might have a brain wired for micro details. They excel at tracking daily grocery runs, keeping the receipts organized, and monitoring the checking account balance.
While the other partner might be a big picture thinker who gets completely overwhelmed by daily tracking.
Exactly. But they might be excellent at macro level tasks, like managing the retirement investments and setting up the automated monthly bill payments.
The magic happens when you explicitly assign these tasks and actually write them down.
Putting it on paper is non-negotiable.
Because it eliminates the gray areas entirely. And gray areas are the fertile ground where resentment grows.
If it is written down, there is no more, "I thought you were going to pay that." It simply becomes, "Hey, looking at our list, you are on electric bill duty this month."
It fundamentally changes the nature of the failure. It turns what feels like a personal betrayal or a moral failing into a simple administrative oversight.
And an administrative error is infinitely easier to forgive and correct than a perceived character flaw.
So true. But okay, once the bleeding has stopped, the roles are defined, and the emotional triggers are bypassed, the source material points out a new problem that emerges: financial fatigue.
Yes, the emergency room face.
Right. If all a couple ever does is sit down to manage crises, avoid late fees, and restrict their spending, they eventually become roommates operating a financial emergency room.
And nobody can live in an emergency room indefinitely. The cortisol levels are just too high. It is exhausting.
Which is why there has to be a crucial transition from survival mode to growth mode. Budgeting shouldn't be an exercise in masochistic restriction.
No, its actual purpose is to fund the life you actually want to live.
It is the mechanism that buys the family vacation, secures the down payment on the house, or provides the capital to start a business.
Or allows you to be wildly generous. Sometimes it just buys the breathing room necessary so you don't have to convene a committee vote every time someone wants to buy a $5 coffee.
To transition from the emergency room to the dream board, couples need a structured, predictable way to check in, a framework that keeps the conversation moving forward rather than constantly looking backward.
The guide lays out a really clear 5-step framework for this.
Let's walk through the logistics of those meetings. How do you actually structure this weekly or monthly check-in so it leads to funding that ideal life?
Well, the process starts before anyone even looks at a spreadsheet. The very first step is to check in. You have to gauge the emotional weather in the room.
Taking the emotional temperature.
Exactly. You start by simply asking, how are we feeling about our finances this week? You don't ask about numbers yet. You are just checking for underlying anxiety or hidden frustrations.
And once that baseline is established, you move to step 2, the practical review. This is a look at the recent spending and the upcoming bills.
But the key here is to treat it as data collection, not a blame session.
You are just observing the facts.
Right. And from there, step 3 is where you shift entirely to the future. You have to align on a shared goal for the upcoming month or week.
And the trick here is choosing just one goal, which I found really interesting. Why is it so important to limit it to a single objective? Why not tackle the credit card debt, the vacation fund, and the car repair all at once?
Because split focus dilutes execution. When you try to conquer 5 financial goals simultaneously, the cognitive load is simply too heavy.
The friction gets too high.
Exactly, and couples inevitably revert to their old habits. But by aligning on one single shared priority, say, fully funding the emergency buffer this month, both partners are pulling the rope in the exact same direction.
The momentum builds so much faster.
Then, step 4 is to assign the logistical tasks necessary to make it happen, relying on those explicitly defined roles we talked about earlier. No gray areas.
But step 5 of this framework is the one that fascinates me the most.
The encouragement step.
Yes. Ending the meeting with intentional encouragement. Mandating that partners offer a genuine compliment or express appreciation for how the other person handled money or responsibility that week.
It seems out of place, right?
It does. Why mandate a compliment in what is essentially a math and logistics meeting?
Because it hits on a profound psychological truth. Appreciation softens correction.
Wow. Appreciation softens correction.
In any dynamic, personal or professional, if a person feels constantly criticized, if every financial meeting is merely an itemized list of their recent failures, overspending, or forgotten tasks, they will completely disengage.
Their brain will just categorize the meeting as a threat.
Exactly. They will trigger that flight response, put up an emotional wall, and eventually stop participating altogether.
They will physically be in the room, but mentally they have completely checked out.
But if they feel seen, if their micro efforts are acknowledged, even something as simple as, I noticed you cooked at home twice this week instead of ordering takeout, thank you, they are far more likely to stay at the table.
Because dreams and goals give financial discipline a reason to exist.
But that intentional encouragement is the fuel that ensures both partners actually stay engaged long enough to see those dreams realized. You aren't just managing cash flow, you are actively managing morale.
Managing morale turns the entire ordeal from a punishing chore into a collaborative project. Taking a step back, the overarching takeaway from all of this is just incredibly hopeful.
It really is.
Money talks absolutely do not have to be a battlefield. Whether you are the saver who guards coupons with your life or the spender who strategically purchases joy the second you see it, the secret to financial unity isn't forcing your partner to fundamentally change who they are.
Not at all. It is about understanding the origin stories that drive your behaviors.
It's about dividing your logistical role so clearly that resentment starves.
And shifting your collective focus away from the anxiety of avoiding late fees and towards the excitement of a shared dream.
But, taking that a step further, there is a generational impact to consider here that I think is a great final thought for everyone listening.
Oh, absolutely. We spent a lot of time analyzing how our own childhood origin stories shaped our current money habits, the unspoken tensions, the hushed arguments behind closed doors, or the survival mechanisms we adopted.
Right.
Well, if you have children in the house, the way you and your spouse are communicating about money right now is actively writing their financial origin story.
That is heavy. They are absorbing the emotional weather of the house.
They absorb every single ounce of it, the tension in the air when the mail arrives, the avoidance of the topic, or conversely, the teamwork, the shared snacks at the kitchen table, and the gentle honesty.
So the provocative question every couple has to ask themselves is this: are you unwittingly passing down a legacy of financial anxiety and avoidance?
Or are you deliberately modeling a partnership that your children will one day want to emulate in their own adult lives?
You aren't just fixing a monthly budget, you are establishing a generational baseline. And that is an incredibly motivating reason to get this right.
It is the best reason.
Well, on that note, hopefully this deep dive equipped you with some new psychological tools and a much fresher perspective on household finances. Your homework for this week is simple. Grab a crunchy snack, sit down with your partner in a room that looks absolutely nothing like a tax office, and initiate your first calm, clear money conversation.
You got this.
Let's leave the courtroom drama to the television networks and start funding the life you actually want to live. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we will catch you on the next one.